Just arrived in Barcelona. We're going to visit the Cold IQ office. I'm really excited. These guys are killing it on LinkedIn and they're one of our favorite Instantly experts. I'm really excited to see how they work, and I thought, why not just meet them in the office, fly out there. We're here in Barcelona, gonna grab a taxi, go to their office and see, what it's all about.
Yeah, I run an AI sales prospecting agency, and the way I got started actually is pretty funny because I was trying to not launch an agency. Essentially, what I was trying to do was to monetize affiliate deals through sales tech companies. So I would make some educational content around how to use sales tools to automate your prospecting, or to source data, or as in like any use case that you would find. And I was trying to sort of advertise and promote some links so that I would get like a recurring, say 20 to 40% affiliate fee out of those referrals I would make. But then what happened is that as I was writing articles and like writing posts to promote all of this tech, I would have more and more people saying, hey, you know what, Mish, it's interesting what you're writing about, but could you actually implement it for me? So I was always saying, no, that's not the business model I'm going after, until one day I needed the money. So I basically said to the guy, you know what, I'm gonna do it if you pay me 3K. And the guy said, you know what, that works for me. And essentially the agency was born this way. And as I started delivering for the person, I realized that he was very satisfied of my work with just me working 1 day per week on his campaigns. And so I made the calculation in my head and I was like, wait, he's paying me 3K per month for like, say 1 day per week of work. And my job is paying me 3K per month for like the entire month, right? Because I was trying to launch this sort of like affiliate business as I was working in another company. And so at this point, I just realized that the economics made way more sense. And so I started to look for more clients. I'd say the biggest edge we have over our competition is our content. So essentially, we found our first clients via some cold email campaigns that I launched. And pretty early on, because I had a marketing background, I thought everything is going to be made easier if I actually build a brand around what we do. And so what I started doing pretty early on was posting on LinkedIn. And I wasn't trying to even generate leads from LinkedIn. In the beginning, I was just trying to generate trust, because I feel like one of the most important levers for acquiring clients is actually gaining trust of the people that are going to be putting a few grand in your pocket every month. And in the beginning, you don't have much case studies. And so I find that like a pretty fast way to gain some social proof is through posting. Because let's say I'm sending you some email outreach, and then what you realize when I'm sending you this outreach email is that I posted, say, 20 to 30 times about the topic that I'm trying to pitch you on. Then you think, okay, this guy knows a thing or two about what he's pitching me. And so I started to post content to build trust until the moment where it shifted and it sort of turned into a conversion mechanism. And I did that up until I grew the audience to the point that like now it's a consistent channel to generate inbound leads for us. I think what I see the most is everybody makes the same claims and try to reproduce success from others by reproducing everything they do. And so, for example, I think that like when you think of the agency world, especially lead generation agencies, it's a super commoditized space. As in like, I don't know how many thousands of lead generation agencies are out there. And so one big mistake that people would do is they would look at a successful agency, for example, like Eric's agency, Growth Engine X, or they could be looking at Cold IQ, and they would say, you know what, I'm going to do exactly what they do. And so, for example, what they will do is they will try to do like the same tutorials that Eric does on YouTube, or they will try to sort of promote and explain how to use tools the same way Cold IQ does. But like what they miss, or what they misunderstand, is the fact that the reason why either say Cold IQ or Growth Engine X works is because we dominated a sub-part of outbound. So for example, if you think of Eric Nowoslowski from Growth Engine X, he's really the guy who's sort of popularized Clay on YouTube. So like he almost sort of, has this ownership of the, Clay expertise within outbound, where he's seen or he's regarded as like, the top guy. And so if our play was to try to do the same thing, it wouldn't be successful. And so what you want to do is you want to think about all of the components of Outbound, and then you want to think about, okay, like what's one subcomponent of it that I can dominate so that like I gather all the attention when it comes to this. And so for example, for us, we just figured, instead of saying like everyone, we are the best outbound agency in the world, we'd say we are the most technology savvy agency in the world. What that means is that, lots of sort of old school companies, they don't like our vision of how outbound works. They are still like very, say, phone calls heavy. They think tech is useless. But then like, if you actually have the same vision as we do, as in you believe that technology is a great lever and so on, then like we'll be the first people you think of. And so I said that like, if I were trying to launch an agency from scratch today, I would be looking at what's an under-tapped component of outbound that I can dominate so that I can be seen as the best guy when it comes to this. For example, I would be thinking, okay, you know what? No one does like some super advanced content about AI prompting for personalization at scale. And I would try to be like the guy who does this the best, so that like every company that has a bias towards prompting or AI prompting is a great lever to get some better results will be thinking about me first. I think I would post on LinkedIn, I would scrape interactions, and then I would manually reach out to every single person we engaged. Because I think that the first thing you want in the beginning is you want feedback. And so you wanted to make it as easy as possible for people to book a meeting with you so that you can hear the pain points they're encountering. And then like based on the patterns you hear within these pain points, then you can decide what to go after. So to give you an example, in the beginning of the agency, I made a poll on LinkedIn and I asked to people what they were most interested in seeing in terms of content. And I had written like data sourcing, AI personalization, spam, and like some other things. And everybody wanted to hear about AI personalization. But then when I jumped into calls with companies, I realized that like 7 out of 10 companies I would be talking to didn't care about AI personalization. They were just struggling to land outside of spam. And so I thought, it actually makes sense, because if you land in spam, it means you're already getting started when it comes to outbound, but you don't get the best results. And so like the fact that some people want to learn about one component of outbound doesn't mean that like that's the sort of component that compels them to book a meeting with you. And so when you reverse engineer this, then you think, talking about AI personalization is good because people want to hear about the topic, but talking about, say, spam and deliverability is what made us book the meetings, essentially. And so I think that like you want to sort of test the feedback as fast as possible, and you can test this by combining the sort of like content and intent signals from like the engagement you get from the content. I'd say the number one thing people should do when they start an agency is to try to identify a revenue generating activity and then do it every day. Because what I see is that lots of people make some fancy plans. They make some fancy marketing deck and then they think, oh, you know what, I'm gonna run this crazy funnel play and so on. But in the beginning, what matters most is you consistently doing something that can generate money for your business. And so for example, this could be outbound campaigns or posting or even ads, as long as it's something where you actually believe that if it works, it's gonna get you some money. And so for example, I would say try to have this goal of sending at least 500 email outreach per day, knowing that like if it lands, then you would be signing a client. If you don't want to go like the sort of email outbound route, then you can do the same with content, as in like your goal should be to just publish one piece of content per day, so that like that like if this actually works, you would be booking some inbound leads to translate into revenue. And so for me, like you want to think about, okay, what's a revenue generating activity or like a potential activity that if I do it over the course of a year, it's impossible for me to not get results, as in signing clients. And then you just do it, you stick to it no matter what, and you don't allow yourself to fail, because it's actually because you give up too much that you end up not sort of making it. Instantly is actually the tool I use to sign my first ever clients. So it started with an Instantly campaign, and it was funny because the targeting was completely off. So essentially, I targeted companies hiring salespeople, and then some guy completely misunderstood my pitch. But then we jumped on a call, and then I ended up closing him for like somewhere along the lines of 4.8K per month. And then like after it helped me to sign my first client, it's been the tool that has been, powering our entire agency. So essentially at the moment we have around 70 B2B clients for whom we run outbound, and depending on what they want to do, which is essentially email outreach, we'll be using one tool or another. But like over 50 of our clients run on Instantly, and so it's by far the tool that allow us to generate 6 million per year to our outbound agency. Wow, good question. I think that LinkedIn outreach is gonna be way easier to gain results from than email outreach, because essentially I think with email outreach, the fact that you can pull secondary domains, and run outbound at such high scale means that the email channel is becoming more and more crowded. But if you want to run the same play via LinkedIn, it's a bit more complicated because it's not as easy to create new LinkedIn accounts as it is to create some new domains. And so I think that the future of outbound is multi-channel, in the sense that you will still need to do email outreach, but if you want to maximize your chances of booking meetings, you need to be adding calling, you need to be adding LinkedIn touch points, and you need to be adding about any channel that you can, because at the end of the day, it's the most important thing is that people view your message wherever they view your message.